Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation. I want to welcome you to a new season, 2023, and to just basically another coach chat. This is something that we do on the regular here to make sure that everyone's up to speed with everything you need to know about training and racing, specifically from the Endurance Nation point of view, which is all about a return on investment, making sure that every dollar, every minute, every ounce of energy you input is going to be brought back to you at least in equal amounts of speed and outcomes or happiness, if not greater amounts thereof. And then also on the learning side as well, we're all about fast track learning. We believe that smarter athletes are faster athletes, and a huge part of why we have a cohort based coaching model where we have athletes working together in small groups, training for specific actually doing a fantastic job of getting themselves ready to be successful over the course of their year. They build friendships, they build relationships, and they learn a great deal along the way. So we're super excited to talk to you a little bit about that progression, specifically from the perspective of what it means to start a new year. For many athletes, starting a new year brings with it a little bit of like anxiety and confusion. And this is understandable. Like going to a new season means new goals, new races. There's a great deal of what we don't know in the future is going to happen. And as a result, it becomes very difficult to plan right now in terms of what you should be doing next. In fact, moving from sort of a big picture goal to daily steps is a large part of what we do here inside Endurance Station, which is, take the impossible and make it manageable, break it down into basic steps, show you how to do it, and connect you with other people who are either walking that path or have walked that path in the past. It's a great resource for you. Now, when it comes to planning a season, what I want to tell you is I really don't want you to get too worried about the big picture items. At the end of the day, we know what type of athlete that you want to be. And by that, I mean, we know the sport that you're doing. We know basically how confident and how fit you are in the context of that sport. And those two things alone, added to the fact we'll know how much you're training, you bring that knowledge to the table. We have a good idea of where we can start. And honestly, defining a starting point is just as important as defining that end point. We can get the end point right. We can say in October you're going to do this race, and this is your time. But if we mess up what you're doing at the start, then really the end doesn't matter as much. So really putting some time and attention to understanding where you're at right now makes a big difference. So my goal today is to cover 4 critical points that will do that for you and hopefully put you in the right mood and position to make excellent decisions for this season. As always, if you've got questions, you can visit us online at any of our channels, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram as well to ask questions. Or you can head over to the EnduranceNation.us website. There's a little chat button at the bottom. Sign up for our newsletter, ask questions, things like that. Be happy to help you out. Okay, awesome. All right, let's dive into it. I got some handy little banners here to keep you and I on track. All right, here we go. First up, mapping out your year. This is really important. And I talked about it from the context of knowing what your A race is before, and that can seem like a little strange for sure to be like, well, I got to know my race. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to get into that race. I don't even know if I want to do it. I need to do some stuff before I get to that race. But it's not just about the races. Mapping out your year also takes into account other big picture things that are happening. There's probably some kind of a flow to your professional life, perhaps a flow to your family life. There are things that you like to do at different times of the year. Maybe you're a winter sports person or a summer sports person. Maybe there's commitments you have, like work travel, or you're fortunate enough to be able to travel, for vacation and so on outside of your regular life. And so those elements are important for us to know. Maybe you have, seasonal affective disorder, right? Maybe you miss the sunlight and winters are terrible for you, or you have terrible hay fever allergies in the summer, and this is the difference. So you live in Florida and it gets super hot in the summer, and so training then is really tough. Whatever those constraints or elements may be, let's get them all out on the table right now. That's really important for us to know. Just to even write them down as bullets, whether you're working with me inside Endurance Station, or you're just working on your own or with another coach, sort of laying those constraints out is actually really important, because the real default is to be like, can you swim on Mondays? Because I said swim on Mondays. Can you swim on Mondays? And you say, I can. We say, great, even though we're not sure you need to swim on Mondays, right? Laying out those big picture pieces kind of gives context to the athlete that you want to become. So if you said you want to become an ultra runner, to your first 50 miler, which is great. We know when 50 milers typically happen, or the range of time you're looking to get them done. And then we also know what the big building blocks are going to be in the way, obstacles to overcome or opportunities that exist out there. Only then can we really start to structure your season to take advantage of those elements. So really, when you sit down to think about mapping things out, draw a quadrant on a piece of paper. One quadrant goes the races that you want to do. Another quadrant goes like the opportunities you have, when you can do extra work, when things are sort of lined up in your favor. Another quadrant goes to like your sort of like the challenges that you know exist out there, right? Like things that are coming. Maybe you're an accountant, tax season is going to be tough for you, whatever that is, right? I'm really running out of examples here. And the other quadrant is things that have gone wrong in the past. And that's an important exercise to go through because just by definition, as human beings, when things go wrong in the past, we like to kind of come up with a story as to why it wasn't really our fault or something and we go forward. I'm not interested in the why. I just want to know that in the past you've had like a nagging calf injury, or in the past things have been really tough for you in the summertime because of work, or your spouse's commitments, or the kids or whatever. All of that's really important because it's not something you would come to you when you were thinking about the other three quadrants, but it has happened to you in the past. And as a result, the odds of it happening again or having some kind of impact in the future, super high. Let's get all of that mapped out. And only then can we start the process of actually being a little more granular with our planning. All right. Okay. Next piece here, connecting with your team. Inside Endurance Nation, when you join us, you get a team. You get up to 600 athletes inside here who are connecting for their races. But even if you don't join us, you probably have a team inside your area or your region, and I strongly urge you to connect with them. They'll have social events and workouts, and it's not just about getting outside of your house and seeing the sunlight and talking to other people, although those are all very good things. It's also just that we do so much learning, like even just having a dialogue about the work you're doing, explaining what's up, or talking about a choice you're making. You'd be surprised what you won't necessarily have a conversation with yourself about that you're willing to talk to a complete stranger about just because they're wearing the same color shoes as you are, right? And I think teams are really a valuable asset in that respect in terms of helping you dive more deeply into what makes you tick, and also just observe what makes other people tick. Things that they do, choices that they've made, outcomes they have. There may be something you haven't considered or has been sort of on the fringe of your thought process that someone else is experiencing right now. This is a great time with the team in a social environment to kind of dive in and click on it, right? Teams usually also have other benefits like events that they do, or races they target, or fun weekends or training things. All of that's a big win. If you don't have that option either, then your team could be something as small as the people who make what you do possible. This could be your family, could be a friend in town, could be your physical therapist or chiropractor, or your primary care who's helping you on this journey. Could be a coworker, or a boss who's super understanding as you go on this journey. Whoever it is that's enabling this endurance journey of yours, they're part of your team. So we can go as granular as that if we need to, but really kind of pulling people together, either to engage with them, like maybe signing up for a team as an example, but also to just kind of float some of the ideas you're having. Like, hey, this year I think I might do a marathon. Just to kind of get it out there, like put it on the table. People want to know, ask questions. It's an opportunity for them to kind of click in and support you. And also just kind of letting them know, like, hey, August might be crazy because September I want to do this Labor Day marathon. Be good for them to know. So spend some time thinking about how you're going to connect this map of your year to the people around you who are going to support you across course this year. The stories that we tell ourselves about the champions that we follow is that they're amazing individuals who can do anything because they're so physically capable. Truth couldn't be further, right? In that people, the more amazing their performance, the more likely they've had other people supporting them along the way, financially, emotionally, spiritually, calorically, whoever it may be, and all of that really lives there. So really take the time to include that team. All right, awesome. Okay, next one, keeping it simple. Define your critical success factors, or rank them. A critical success factor inside Endurance Nation is something that if you get good at it is going to really help you achieve your race day goal, whether it's completion, or speed, or hitting a specific time, or achieving a certain rank, whatever that may be. So in the case of, say, triathlon, you've got really 3 disciplines. I think about 4 if you include transitions. And so defining a critical success factor may be related to one specific discipline or one specific area of your race. In the case of a single sport athlete, like say you're doing marathons or something like that, or long distance swimming, or long distance cycling, etc., your critical success factor might be a little more dialed in, specific to a specific fitness, like improving your threshold, or maybe a specific volume number, like, hey, I've got to, last time I did this ride or this race, I really didn't do a lot of volume at all and I suffered. So this time around, a critical success factor for me is to hit 500 miles in a week for 2 consecutive weeks. I think if I do that, I'll be successful this year. Whatever those parameters are, let's get those laid out. If there's multiple parameters, let's rank them, so if I can't hit the fourth and most important one, if I can get the top three, I'm good. If I can't hit the top one, but I can hit two, three, four, I'm good. Give yourself some North Star metrics essentially that allow you to aim towards. And if we, sort of like aim for the moon, we land among the stars. It's very similar with our training as well. If I aim to run a 50-mile week, which is crazy aggressive for me, and I only get to 42, that's probably a lot better than I was ever going to do before. There's also probably reasons why I didn't get all the miles in, probably just like total self and safety decision making, but it is helpful. So when you do think about what you're doing, it's important to identify these critical success factors and have them clearly identified, because they'll be North Stars that you'll not only use now at the beginning of your training as they're relevant to you, but over time as well, as decisions become more complex, in that the opportunities for decision making narrow. The closer we get to a race, you have less different things to do, you have less time. At the same time, the specificity of those options need to be really dialed in, because the work gets more and more complex. So really being able to focus and say, I have an opportunity to do this other race. It's 2 weeks from my other race. Well, if one of your critical success factors was volume, then 2 weeks out is still enough time. And the critical success factor wins in that scenario. So it's less about the opportunity that pops up, but say the critical success factor becomes a tool through which you can make a better decision. I usually recommend anywhere between 3 to 5 critical success factors for your year, and just having those written out. Again, it's not about hitting a specific time. It's the things that you think will have the biggest impact on your season. Could be better sleep, could be better body composition, could be finding a way to get a year-end race on your schedule, even though the boss usually is against it. Some version of that would be helpful. Okay. All right. Last point here for the beginning of the year to talk about: solving for the first 6 weeks. I kind of alluded to this, got a little ahead of myself there with the starting of your season being more important than the ending, but really this is a different perspective on it, which is to say that your first 6 weeks really matter with your training, especially whether you're starting a new year or you're actually getting back into fitness, you're restarting fitness and starting a new year. It takes about 6 weeks to get physiologically adapted to the work, and not just the work you're doing for your training, but just doing that work and doing that work on a consistent basis, reorganizing your sleep patterns, changing your calorie intake to map the work that you want to do, making sure you're sustainable as a whole right here as a person. That takes some time. There'll be ups and downs in these first 6 weeks. And I like to put a time frame on it. You can draw it up on the wall or check the boxes off a calendar, but we know that we've got a finite amount of time. Just got to get to this tiny little square, and I'll be okay. And everything I'm doing now is really just to get me to this tiny little square. It's tempting to look at it overall and be like, well, my critical success factor was to hit a threshold of 9 gigahertz watts. Fine. Like if that's your goal, that's great. You're not going to hit it in 6 weeks, and nor did you ever think you were going to hit it in 6 weeks. But if you're measuring yourself against those macro level numbers, which are in your head if you haven't put them down on paper, but you're doing it so incrementally within those first 6 weeks, you're really going to be sorely disappointed, right? If I want to weigh 175 on race day, but I'm 185 now, it's going to take me a long time, much longer than 6 weeks to get down to that time. But if I'm weighing myself every day and saying, I'm not 175, I'm not 175, I'm going to be saying to myself that to myself for like 9 months before I actually get there. It's going to be a really disappointing 9 months and possibly not so helpful. So instead, shortening that time frame for success and redefining what it means in terms of consistency, dedication to the flow of your plan, doing the pieces, even if you can't do all of the workouts. A better version of that would be always being able to do the main sets, even if you can't do all of the time. Some version of that makes a big difference in getting those first 42 days. So write it down, map it out. So to recap for today's talk, we talked about mapping out your year, all the elements, not just the races. We talked about connecting with your team, making sure that whether it's an actual team like Endurance Nation or a local team, or even just the people who make your endeavors possible, you are surrounded by a network of folks who enable you or inspire you or anger you into doing this. I'm not sure what your environment is. I hope you're safe. But those people are important to sort of acknowledge and factor into your decision-making process. Third part is defining your critical success factors. What are the things that are going to make your year successful? Most people decide by how fast will I go, or how many races will I do, or et cetera. Those aren't success factors. Those are outcomes. They're not things that set you up for success unless you're going for some sort of Guinness Book World Record. So what are the success factors that will enable that, right? Like what do I need to achieve here so that I can do that, right? If I want to win a push-up contest, up with 100 push-ups in like 3 minutes. I've got to be able to do push-ups every single day, like based on critical success factor, right? I've got to be able to do 30 push-ups every day, another version of that. I need to do some other strength. I need to lose some upper body mass, maybe, right? Like, how do I do that? Those are all different critical success factors, right? And last but not least, solving for the first 6 weeks. Going from 0 to 1 with your fitness is the hardest thing. Escaping the Earth's gravitational pull is critical, and you have to be really patient with yourself and also really focused. So if you had to allocate, 100% of your mental energy across a year, these first 6 months, especially for those of you who are getting back to training, these first 6 months might actually end up being like 30%, 33% of your mental energy just to get out of the gravitational pull of your old life and to get things organized and to start eating properly and getting up at the right time and all of that stuff. It will pay massive dividends down the end, I promise you. But getting to that 6 week finish line is really critical. So set those expectations and get after it. Right. I'm Coach Patrick from Endurance Nation. Excited that you tuned in today to hear this coach lesson. If you want to learn more, you can head over to endurancenation.us, where you can learn much more about Endurance Nation, how we train at endurancenation.us/join. You'll see all the different options we have for coaching around our cohort-based model, how you can plug into the team either now in the winter or later in the season around a race to make sure that you have the support network that you need and that you're taking advantage of our focus, our relentless focus on return on investment and rapid learning. All right, folks, take care. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you next time.